On the morning of my daughter's wedding, I walked up to the tall iron gate with an envelope in my hand, the same battered envelope that held the last of the money I'd spent 10 long years saving for her future. The air was cool, the kind that carries a faint promise of celebration. I remember thinking how proud Jessica would have been to see Aimee today. I took a step closer, already picturing her smile when I handed her the envelope. Then I froze. My own photograph, cheaply printed, grainy, clearly pulled from some forgotten corner of the internet, was taped to the bars of the gate. Above it, in heavy black letters, someone had mounted a sign, "Do not let him in." While you're here, don't forget to subscribe, hit the hype button, and support this channel with a like. And tell us below. Have you ever faced something like this? For a full second, my mind refused to process it. I waited for a joke to reveal itself, some explanation, some voice calling out that it was a misunderstanding. But there was nothing, only the still morning air, and the guard standing uncomfortably beside me. I didn't shout. I didn't ask who put it there. I didn't cry, even though the weight settling in my chest felt like someone had cracked open my ribs with their bare hands. I simply turned around, walked back to my pickup, and drove away without a word. 4 hours later, the entire wedding unraveled the moment they realized I wasn't coming back. But to understand why that sign felt like a blade to the heart, I need to go back. I need to explain how a man spends a decade setting aside every spare dollar he can scrape from jobs that grind down his body and wear out his bones, all so his daughter can have the one thing he wished he could have given her mother. My name is Troy Harlan. I'm 59 years old, and I've worked with my hands my whole life. Handyman, day laborer, construction cleanup, hauling junk, fixing broken gutters, clearing yards after storms. If it paid, I did it. I've lived in the same faded trailer on the outskirts of town for nearly 15 years. The rent is cheap, nobody bothers me, and the silence at night is the kind a man can think in. It's not fancy, it's not impressive, but it's mine, and it has kept a roof over my head while I tried to give my only child a better start. Aimee is 27 now. She works the front desk at a dental clinic, answers phones, schedules cleanings, deals with people who show up 5 minutes late and expect miracles. She's always been a good kid, smart, responsible, the kind of girl who grew up faster than she should have. She has her mother's eyes, too, deep brown, soft around the edges, eyes that used to stop me cold every time Jessica looked at me. Jessica, my wife. Though wife hardly feels like the right word when you've only been married for 3 hours. We had Aimee young, too young, according to pretty much everyone in our lives, but we didn't care. From the moment she arrived, she was everything. She was our family. When she was 2, we finally saved enough for a small wedding. Nothing grand, a courthouse ceremony, a borrowed dress for Jess, and dinner at a diner afterward. We didn't need more. We just wanted to make it official. We were driving home that night. Jessica was laughing, really laughing, that sparkling laugh that always made me feel like the world was good. Then headlights filled the windshield. A truck ran a red light. The impact tore through the world before I could even blink. I woke up in the hospital. Jessica didn't wake up at all. From that day on, it was just me and Aimee. And I swore, every single morning, every single night, that she would have the happiness we were robbed of. She would have the wedding Jessica and I never got to truly celebrate, the one we didn't get to remember growing old together. 10 years ago, I opened a metal box and treated it like something sacred. $5 when I had it, 10 on better days, 20 on rare miracles. I hid that box under my bed and didn't touch it, no matter how hard things got. When the furnace broke in February, I fixed it myself. When my tires wore out, I bought used ones. When I got sick and missed nearly 2 weeks of work, I lived on canned soup and pride, but I never touched the wedding money. Last month, I counted it, $11,400. Enough to give Aimee the things she deserved: dress alterations, flowers, photographer deposit, the venue's backup generator rental, and anything else that would make her day perfect. She was marrying a man named Evan Knight, 30 years old, worked in supply chain management, clean-shaven, polite, the type who memorizes the wine list before a date. His parents, Richard and Victoria, were comfortable folks. Not wealthy, but better off than I ever was. They had a tidy house, nice furniture, a backyard with a gazebo. Aimee adored them. She talked about how Victoria helped her choose color palettes for the napkins, how Richard told the best stories at dinner, how they treated her like the daughter they never had. I was glad for her, truly. If they gave her stability, warmth, or even a sense of belonging she felt lacking, then I was grateful. But little by little, things shifted. At first, Aimee stopped inviting me to wedding meetings, said it was girl stuff. Then she stopped asking for my opinion entirely. Cake flavor, music choice, seating arrangements, all handled by the Knights. I didn't want to seem overbearing, so I let it go. I told myself she was growing up, building her own life. 3 weeks before the wedding, I handed her the envelope of money in the clinic parking lot. Sun beating down, cars pulling in and out, her lunch break already ticking away. She held the envelope like it was something contaminated. "Dad, you didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," I said. "It's yours, for the wedding." She smiled, or tried to. "Thanks. I'll make sure it gets to the right people." No hug, no real gratitude. She just turned and walked back inside. Something inside me tightened then, like a rope pulled too taut. The wedding was scheduled for May 18th, morning ceremony, afternoon reception. The venue was a historic estate outside town with manicured gardens and a big white tent stretched across the lawn. Fancy, elegant, the kind of place you pay just to breathe near. I woke up early that morning, showered, shaved, put on my best, my only suit. It didn't fit like it used to, but it was clean and pressed. I looked in the mirror and whispered Jessica's name. I imagined her there beside me, telling me our little girl was about to walk into a new life. I drove to the venue around 7. Ceremony wasn't until 10, but I wanted to be early. I wanted to help. I wanted to see Aimee before she walked down that aisle. When I reached the estate, the iron gate was closed. A security guard stood beside it, clipboard in hand. "Morning," I said. "I'm Troy Harlan, father of the bride." He checked his list, frowning. "I'm sorry, sir. Your name isn't here." I forced a smile. Probably an oversight. My daughter is Aimee. But he didn't step aside. Instead, he pointed toward the gate. That's when I saw it. My photograph and the sign. "Do not let him in." It didn't feel real. It felt staged, like something out of a cruel prank show. But the guard's uneasy expression told me everything I needed to know. I put the truck in reverse and left without a word. I pulled over a mile down the road, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The envelope lay on the passenger seat, a reminder of everything I'd tried to give. I called Aimee, straight to voicemail. Called Evan. Nothing. Called the venue. No answer. So I went home. Hours crawled by. I sat in my trailer, still in my suit, staring at the wall, replaying the sign again and again. A little after noon, a text came from a number I didn't know. Something went wrong at the wedding. Power's out. Caterers are leaving. The knights are blaming you. It hit me slowly, like a fuse burning toward an explosion. The generator. I'd been the one who rented it, and after seeing that sign at the gate, I'd canceled the order. I wasn't thinking of revenge or consequences. I was thinking stupidly that I didn't belong there, and nobody knew I'd canceled it. Minutes later, Riverside Estate called. A frantic woman asking why the generator hadn't arrived, why the food was spoiling, why the lights kept failing. "I was told not to come," I said quietly. The silence on her end was heavy. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with messages from Aimee, angry, panicked, voicemails thick with tears and accusation. "Dad, what did you do? You ruined everything. You always find ways to embarrass me." That last line cracked something inside me. It wasn't sudden rage. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was recognition. A realization that somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being her father and had become an inconvenience, something to manage, to hide, to keep out of sight. And in that moment, sitting alone in my quiet trailer in an old suit meant for celebration, something inside me turned to ice. I didn't call Aimee back. I didn't explain myself. I didn't offer an apology or a justification. I simply sat there in the dim light of my trailer as her messages came in one after another, lighting up my phone like a distress beacon I had no intention of answering. Most were from her. A few were from Evan, sharp and clipped. One was from Victoria, sweet on the surface, syrupy even, but with that unmistakable condescending tilt her voice always carried. She wrote, "Please help us resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding." As if I had simply gotten confused and wandered away like a child in a supermarket. I didn't reply. Instead, I powered off my phone, watched the screen fade to black, and let the silence settle over everything. I changed out of the suit I'd carefully cleaned, ironed, and set aside for a day I thought would be one of the proudest of my life. I hung it back in the closet where it would probably stay for a long, long time. Then I pulled on my work clothes, worn jeans, boots with dust still wedged in the treads, and an old flannel shirt that smelled faintly of sawdust and engine oil, clothes that belonged to the real version of me, not the father of the bride image I'd tried to embody. When I stepped outside, the sun was low and harsh, casting long shadows across the gravel lot. My trailer sat among a dozen others, quiet as always, the kind of place where no one bothered you unless they needed something. I walked toward my truck, planning nothing, thinking nothing, and that's when I saw the mess. My tools, scattered across the gravel like someone had tossed them out with the trash, wrenches lying in the dirt, screwdrivers half buried in dust, my red toolbox overturned, the drawer bent, the contents dumped out, a hammer with a cracked handle, a pry bar bent at the wrong angle, a tape measure snapped clean in half. Somebody hadn't just dumped them, they'd gone out of their way to damage them. I didn't need to guess who. The moment I saw the wreckage, Richard Knight's name flashed across my mind like a neon sign. This had his fingerprints all over it. The man was territorial, proud, and quick to assert himself when he felt threatened. He probably stopped by before the wedding, maybe even the night before, just to send a message. Stay away. You're not part of this family. You're not wanted. I knelt down and started gathering the tools one by one. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't falter. My thoughts were level and steady, as if someone had flipped a switch inside me. I inspected each tool as I picked it up, separating the intact ones from the damaged ones with quiet precision. Then I sat down on the trailer steps, the metal still warm from the sun, and I let 10 years of memories run through my mind. Every double shift. Every time I said no to myself so I could say yes to her. Every time I skipped a meal because saving $5 felt more important. Every repair I made with borrowed parts, every bill I paid late so I wouldn't touch the wedding fund. All of it, 10 years of sacrifice done for a single purpose. Aimee's future, her happiness, her day, and she thought I was an embarrassment. That word, embarrassment, echoed louder than any insult ever thrown at me. I went back inside and turned my phone on again. It vibrated instantly, alive with missed calls and new messages. Aimee's texts had shifted over time. Panic first, then frustration, then outright anger. By the end, her words were clipped, icy, rehearsed. The most recent message had been sent 20 minutes earlier. I hope you're happy. You ruined everything. I read it 3 times, but the meaning didn't change. Then I tapped on her voicemail, the one where her voice shook with rage and grief and disappointment. You're always finding ways to embarrass me. It played in my ear like a confession, not the confession of a moment, but of a belief she had carried for years. I thought about Jessica, about her warm hands, her easy laugh, the night she passed, the promises I whispered to Aimee afterward, the promises to make up for the mother she lost, to give her a life big enough for both parents' love. And then I thought about that sign on the gate, my photograph, a warning label slapped over my existence. I stood, walked to the bedroom, and reached under the bed for the metal box I'd kept hidden for a decade. I opened it slowly, like unveiling something long buried. The envelope inside was still thick and heavy with the money I'd saved, $11,400, the cost of 10 years of sacrifice. I pulled out the envelope, held it in both hands. Then, with deliberate calm, I tore it in half. Not the money, just the envelope, the symbol, the thing that tied me to the illusion I'd been living in. The 2 halves fluttered to the floor, useless now. I didn't feel rage, not even heartbreak. I felt awake, wide awake, in a way I hadn't been for years, like I'd been moving through life underwater and someone had finally dragged me to the surface. If they erased me from the wedding, then I would erase the image of myself they relied on, the quiet, compliant man who swallowed everything and asked for nothing, so I watched. In the days that followed, I observed them the way I had observed clients for decades. People forget the handyman is there. They forget he has eyes and ears. They forget that quiet does not mean blind. And I learned things. I started with Richard. His company, Night Build, wasn't big, maybe a dozen workers. I'd seen his guys in supply stores, overheard them bragging about how fast they finished jobs. Too fast, really. I drove to one of their active sites, a 2-story home addition in an affluent suburb. I parked down the street and strolled over casually, looking for all the world like another contractor or inspector. No one stopped me. I blended in. The moment I stepped onto the site, I saw the truth. Sloppy framing, reused lumber, precarious cuts in load-bearing beams, brackets that didn't meet code, supports that were too thin, too short, too weak. Nothing that would crumble today or tomorrow, but in a year, 2, a harsh winter storm or a heavy snow load, and the whole addition would sag or tear itself apart. I took photos, dozens of them, not because I knew what I'd do with them, just because facts matter, because truth is a tool too. Then I looked into Victoria. Her staging business, Night Touch Interiors, had a polished website with glossy photos. I knew better than to trust images. I called vendors I trusted, florists, furniture suppliers, independent artisans. I asked casual questions, the kind that sound like small talk but reveal layers. Most had worked with her. Several said she was fine. One said she still owed him $1,200 from months ago. Another said she had returned damaged items and refused to cover the fee. Patterns matter. I wrote everything down. Evan was trickier, no public business, no reputation I could easily access. But I knew where he worked, a logistics firm in a warehouse complex near the highway. I drove by one evening and parked in the lot, invisible in a world of tired workers and long shifts. A few minutes later, Evan walked out. Crisp shirt, stiff posture. He got into a silver sedan. I followed from a distance. He met two men in suits at a bar downtown. They talked. Evan gestured often, dominating the conversation. The other two men seemed irritated, tapping fingers, shaking heads, glancing at their watches. Not friendly, not supportive. I didn't know what it meant, but I noted it. Details always matter later, even when they don't matter now. A week passed before Aimee called. I almost ignored it. But I answered. Dad. Her tone was flat, neutral, no warmth, no remorse. Aimee, we need to talk. All right. Can you come to the house? She asked. Whose house? Evan's parents. We're staying with them until we find a place. Of course they were. What do you want to talk about? I asked. She hesitated. The wedding. There were unexpected expenses. The venue is charging for damages. The caterer wants a cancellation fee. It's a lot, Dad. We need help. Ah, there it was. You want me to pay? I said quietly. You're my father. I thought you'd want to help. Aimee, I already gave you $11,000. That's gone. It barely covered half of what we needed. And now you want more. I'm asking, she said sharply. Please. I thought of the sign at the gate, my tools on the gravel, her voicemail. No, I said. Complete silence. What? She whispered, stunned. I said no. Her voice sharpened. Are you serious right now? Very. You know what? Fine. I should have expected this. You've shown exactly where your priorities are. Have I? You didn't even fight to come to my wedding. You just left. You didn't call. You didn't explain. You just disappeared. And now you won't help fix the mess you caused. I repeated her words slowly, tasting them. The mess I caused. Yes, if you had just brought the generator like you were supposed to. I wasn't supposed to bring anything, I cut in. I was banned, remember? My face on a sign. Do not let him in. Silence, long and heavy. I didn't know about that, she said eventually. Didn't you? No. That was Evan and his parents. They thought it'd be easier if you didn't come. They didn't want any drama. Drama, I echoed. You know what I mean. They just wanted the day to be perfect. And you agreed that I would have ruined it. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She hung up. I stared at the phone. My hand was steady, my pulse calm. She hadn't defended me. She hadn't questioned them. She hadn't even asked why they wanted me gone. She simply accepted it, and now she wanted more money. I opened my contacts, hovered over her name, then I deleted it. When I pressed that button, the quiet in my trailer felt like the first real peace I'd had in years. 3 days later, I was at the hardware store picking up sandpaper for a small repair job when I saw Richard Knight. He was at the contractor checkout, stacking sheets of plywood on a flat cart with the impatience of a man who believed the world owed him efficiency. The store smelled like sawdust and rubber hoses, and the harsh fluorescent lights washed everything in pale yellow. When Richard lifted his head and noticed me, his expression shifted instantly. First surprise, then irritation, then something colder. He left his cart and walked straight toward me, each step deliberate. Harlan. I gave him a small nod, said nothing. He planted himself in front of me, shoulders squared, jaw tight. I'm going to make this real simple, Richard said. His voice was low, but the way he spoke made people nearby glance over. Stay away from my family. Stay away from my son. Stay away from Aimee. You've caused enough trouble. I kept my voice level. I haven't caused anything. His mouth twisted into a humorless smile. The wedding was a damn nightmare because of you. No, I said softly. The wedding was a nightmare because you taped my face to a gate and locked me out. His jaw pulsed. That was for everyone's good, including yours. Was it? He nodded sharply. Yeah, it was. Look, Troy, let's not pretend here. You don't belong in that world. You're a decent enough guy, I'm sure, but you are not what Aimee needs right now. She's moving up in life, building something better, and dragging around a father who lives in a trailer and fixes toilets for a living doesn't help her image. Something inside me shifted. Not pain, not anger, just clarity, like a window had been wiped clean. Her image, I repeated. That's right. He said it with confidence, as if he were delivering a universal truth. Image matters. Perception matters. And whether you like it or not, you're a weight around her neck. I studied him. Really studied him. He was roughly my age, maybe a couple of years younger. Same height, same build. But he carried himself like a man who had never been humbled by life. Never felt bones ache from overwork. Never stood in a grocery aisle deciding between paying a bill or buying dinner. He had the stance of a man who believed he had outgrown consequence. You done? I asked quietly. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the lingering bitterness of coffee on his breath, close enough that I could see the smudges of dust on his collar. If I see you near my family again, we're going to have a problem, he said. Understand? I didn't blink, didn't lean back, didn't give him the satisfaction of flinching. I don't start fights, I said calmly, but I finish things. His eyes narrowed. For a moment, the tension snapped tight between us. His hand twitched, just enough for me to know he considered throwing a punch. But someone called his name from across the store. He looked over, annoyed, then stepped back. Stay away, he repeated. Then he turned and walked off, the plywood cart squeaking behind him. I paid for my sandpaper and left, but that night, sleep wouldn't come. Richard's words kept drifting through my mind like smoke you can't wave away. You're a weight around her neck. I sat in the dark and thought about Aimee as a little girl, sitting on my shoulders, reaching up to touch the leaves on low branches. How she used to look at me like I was the strongest man alive, like I could fix anything, solve anything, take on the whole world if I had to. When had that changed? I got up, made coffee, and sat at my small kitchen table, the same one I'd bought secondhand years ago. I pulled out a notebook and started writing. Writing has always steadied me. Richard Knight, night build, reused materials, sloppy framing, code violations, Victoria Knight, Night Touch Interiors, unpaid vendors, 6 months overdue, 1,200 owed, Evan Knight, logistics, suspicious bar meeting, 2 irritated men, expense reports questioned. I didn't know what it all connected to yet. But building anything, whether it's a house, a plan, or the truth, starts with knowing the pieces. Over the next week, I kept watching. One night, close to midnight, I drove back to the job site where Richard's crew had been working. There were no workers now, just portable floodlights casting stark shadows across the skeletal frame of the addition. I didn't touch anything, didn't sabotage anything. I only looked. What I found made my stomach drop. The load-bearing supports weren't just undersized, they were installed incorrectly, angled wrong. Some weren't anchored properly. The framing around the windows was uneven. Someone had either rushed the work or cut every corner possible. The house wouldn't collapse today. But someday, under the right pressure, storm winds, a heavy snowfall, it would crumble in silence, and someone would be inside when it did. I took more pictures, measurements, notes, enough for any trained eye to see the problem. The next morning, I did something I'm not proud of, but I don't regret it either. I called the city inspector's office, gave an anonymous tip, mentioned safety issues, gave the address, then hung up. 2 days later, I drove by. Yellow caution tape flapped in the breeze. Inspectors swarmed the place, pointing at beams, shaking their heads, taking photographs. A bright red stop work order was stapled to one of the posts. I didn't feel triumphant, but I didn't feel guilty either. Justice isn't always polite. Later that week, I met with a vendor Victoria owed money to. His name was Paul. Thin guy, nervous hands, tired eyes. I offered to buy him coffee at a diner. She keeps promising to pay, Paul said, rubbing the side of his mug. But it's been 6 months. Every time I call, she has an excuse. I'm out $1,200. That's not nothing for a small operation. What if I helped you get your money back? I asked. Suspicion flickered across his face. Why would you do that? Let's just say I don't like seeing people get stepped on. I paused. I just need everything you've got. Emails, invoices, dates. He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I can do that. Good. Another piece. A few days later, Aimee called. I saw her name flash across the screen. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail instead. Dad, I don't know what's going on with you, but this needs to stop. Richard's job got shut down because of some inspection. Mom's business is having issues. Evan's boss is asking questions about his expense reports. Everything is falling apart. And I know you're involved somehow. Please, just leave us alone. I listened to the voicemail 3 times. What stood out wasn't the accusation. Not the fear, not the assumption that I must be the cause of all their problems. It was what she didn't say. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't apologize for the sign at the gate. She didn't acknowledge what they'd done to me. She didn't ask to meet. She didn't want to talk. She wanted control. She wanted silence. She wanted me gone. I deleted the voicemail. That night, I sat outside with a beer in my hand. The stars were bright. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. I thought of Jessica, how she would have urged compassion, forgiveness, mercy. She would have told me to let go, to be gentle, to move on. But Jessica wasn't here. And the version of me who would have done anything to keep Aimee happy, he wasn't here either. He'd been buried the moment I saw my own face taped to a gate. I finished my beer, stood up, and went inside. I found the torn envelope, the one I'd ripped apart in a moment of clarity. I taped the halves back together, not because I wanted to repair it, but because I wanted to preserve it. A reminder, a symbol, a gravestone for 10 years of sacrifice. Then I carried it out to my truck and set it on the passenger seat. I didn't have a plan yet, but I would. And when the time came, they would understand exactly what they had thrown away. The next break came from a place I never expected. I was knee-deep in brush, clearing out a vacant lot for a landlord who needed it rent-ready, when my phone rang. Unknown number. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Lately, every call felt like another demand, another accusation, another hand reaching out to take something from me. But something nudged me, and I answered. "Is this Troy Harlan?" "Yeah." "This is Melissa Grant. I'm a reporter with the County News. I'm working on a story about construction safety and code violations. Your name came up in connection with a tip called in about night build. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions." I wiped sweat from my forehead and leaned against my truck. "I don't know anything about that." "Really?" She paused, letting the silence stretch. "Because the tip came from a phone number registered to you." I didn't respond. The wind rustled the brush behind me. Somewhere nearby, a bird shrieked its complaint. "Mr. Harlan, I'm not trying to get you in trouble," she continued. "I'm trying to understand what's happening. 3 night build projects have been flagged in less than a month. That doesn't happen by accident. Someone clearly knows where to look." "Maybe they're just bad at their job," I said. Melissa gave a dry, professional laugh. "Maybe. Or maybe someone with experience in structural work knows exactly what violations to report." I kept silent. She pushed on. "I've been looking into Richard Knight's history. He's had minor citations before, warnings, notes, small reprimands, nothing catastrophic. But complaints have been stacking up the last few years. And now this. If there's a pattern, I want to expose it. But I need someone with first-hand knowledge." "Why call me?" I asked. "I'm a reporter. I dig, and I dug. I found out you're Aimee Harlan's father, and she recently married into the Knight family. And according to several social media posts," she hesitated, her tone cooling, "you weren't at the wedding. That's interesting." I closed my eyes. Of course. There's nowhere to hide anymore. Even humiliation has a digital trail. "I can't help you," I said. "Can't or won't?" "Both." "Mr. Harlan," she said, voice softer now, "if Richard Knight is putting families at risk with shoddy construction, isn't that something people should know?" My mind involuntarily replayed the images. The misaligned studs, the undersized beams, the hacked-apart lumber, the structural weaknesses that would one day fail under weight or weather. "Do your story," I said, "but leave me out of it." "Fair enough. Thank you for your time." She hung up. I stood with the phone in my hand, staring at nothing. I hadn't meant for my tip to ripple outward. I hadn't intended for the dominoes to fall publicly. I just wanted them to feel the edges of their own carelessness, to see they weren't untouchable. But now, the story was growing legs, running on its own, and I wasn't sure if anyone could rein it back in, including me. That night, Evan showed up at my trailer. I heard his car long before I saw him, the too smooth purr of an engine built for people who never worried about repair costs. It idled, then cut off. Gravel crunched under expensive soles. Then came the knock. Hard. Impatient. I opened the door. Evan stood there in navy slacks and a button-down shirt. His collar was open, his sleeves rolled, but he still had that groomed, curated look of a man who thought appearances equaled substance. His face was tight, eyes sharp with indignation. "We need to talk," he said. "No," I replied. "We don't." "Yes, we do." He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. I didn't stop him, just closed the door and watched. His eyes drifted around my home, the cramped living room, the old recliner, the laminate countertops, the modest shelves. The judgment radiating off him wasn't even subtle. It was a sneer wearing human skin. "This is where you live," he said. "Yeah." He shook his head slowly, as if confirming a theory. No wonder Aimee wanted to get out. Still, I said nothing. He planted himself in front of me. You need to stop. Whatever you're doing, whoever you're calling, whatever lies you're spreading, it ends now. I haven't lied, I said. My father's business is being shredded. My mother is losing clients by the day. I'm being questioned at work about completely legitimate expenses. And all of this, every piece, started after the wedding, after you decided to throw a tantrum and sabotage us. I didn't sabotage anything, I said evenly. I just stopped cleaning up other people's messes. You called the inspectors. Don't pretend you didn't. I made a call, I admitted. One call. If your father's work was sound, nothing would have come of it. Evan stepped forward, puffing up like a man who'd never taken a punch in his life but liked pretending he could deliver one. You're pathetic, he said. A pathetic old man who can't accept that his daughter outgrew him. She doesn't need you anymore. She has a real family now. Real support, real stability, not some washed-up handyman living in a rusted tin box who smells like sweat and dirt. His words didn't sting, they clarified. I examined him the way I examined wood grain. Carefully, noting the weak points, I saw entitlement, fear, fragile pride hiding behind tailored shirts and inherited confidence. You done? I asked. No, he snapped. You're going to leave us alone. Stop calling inspectors, stop feeding reporters, stop digging for dirt, stop dragging us down because you're miserable with your own life. I'm not miserable, I said. I'm just awake. His brows drew together. What's that supposed to mean? It means I finally see you, all of you, and you're not nearly as untouchable as you think. His face flushed red. He stepped another inch closer, so near I could feel the heat of his anger. If you don't stop, he said, voice low and trembling, I'll make sure you regret it. I smiled, small, quiet, unforced, because in that moment I realized something important. He wasn't angry. He was scared. Get out of my house, I said. He froze. Now. He blinked, stepped back, then turned toward the door. Before leaving, he paused, hand on the frame. Aimee doesn't want to see you again, he said. Ever. She told me to tell you that. Then he left. I stood alone in the silence of my trailer. My hands were shaking, not from fear, not from adrenaline, but from something that felt like focus sharpening into purpose. Aimee didn't want to see me again. Fine. I would make sure she never forgot me. The news story ran 3 days later. Front page of the county section. Splashed across the fold in bold type, local construction company under investigation for safety violations. Underneath, a photo of the job site I had reported. Inspectors in bright vests, a red stop work order stapled to a post. The article described the code violations in clinical detail, undersized beams, structural weaknesses, reused materials. Then it named the company responsible. Richard Knight's name was everywhere. His quotes, his past citations, his denials. I read the article twice, slowly, calmly. Then I folded the paper, slid it behind the seat of my truck, and sat for a moment with my hands resting on the steering wheel. I didn't smile, didn't frown, just breathed. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A text from Aimee, the first one in more than a week. I saw the article. I know you did this. You're destroying people's lives, Dad. I don't even know who you are anymore. I read it, let the words settle, then set the phone down without typing a single letter. An hour later, another message. Victoria is losing clients because of rumors you're spreading. Evan might lose his job. Richard's company is finished. Are you happy now? Does this make you feel better? I turned off the phone. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't sad. I was simply moving forward, steadily, methodically, one step at a time, like walking a path I had been avoiding for years, but now finally saw clearly. That evening, I began gathering everything I had. I spread it all across the kitchen table, printed photos of the job sites, invoices Victoria had ignored, the messages and documents Paul had sent. I labeled each set, added dates, made notes. I arranged them into a folder so organized it could have belonged to an attorney preparing for trial. When everything was sorted, I sat back and stared at the growing pile. Piece by piece, a picture was forming, but there were still gaps, particularly around Evan. That meeting at the bar, him leaning forward, talking too fast, the two suited men looking irritated, had bothered me from the start. Something about their body language, something about Evan's tone. So I made a call. A guy I used to work with, years ago. Someone with connections in the logistics industry, someone who knew how companies worked behind the scenes. I asked him what he knew about Evan's employer, if there had been any complaints, any recent rumors. He called me back 2 days later. "Your guy's in trouble," he said without preamble. "Word is he's been fudging expense reports, claiming vendor discounts that don't exist and pocketing the difference." "How much?" I asked, keeping my voice flat. "Little at a time," he said. "Couple hundred here, couple hundred there, over a year, and maybe 10, 15 grand. A slow, cold satisfaction washed over me. Not joy, not triumph, just acknowledgement, like a puzzle piece snapping cleanly into place. "How do you know all this?" I asked. "People talk," he said, "especially when someone gets sloppy. Evan's been bragging about his bonuses, but his numbers don't match the company's. It's only a matter of time before someone with authority notices." "Thanks," I said quietly. "Troy," he added, "be careful. The Knights sound like the kind of people who'll push back hard when threatened." "I know." I hung up and sat at my kitchen table long after the call ended. Then I pulled out my notebook and wrote everything down in a new section. Dates, inconsistencies, Evan's actions, the bar meeting, the expense reports. A web began forming, connections weaving between Richard's failing business, Victoria's debts, and Evan's fraud. Individually, each issue was small, fixable. A bad inspection here, a late payment there, a questionable expense buried in paperwork. But together? Together they formed an image, a family that lived on appearances, fragile and hollow beneath the surface. Just like they had treated me, invisible, expendable, unnecessary, a blemish to be hidden. Now the truth of them was coming into focus, and I intended to let it sharpen. Over the next few days, I heard through acquaintances that Richard had confronted one of his crew members, accused him of leaking information to the press, threatened to fire him. The man quit on the spot, told Richard he was tired of taking the blame for shoddy shortcuts. Night Build lost another contract that same afternoon. Victoria called me. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice thin and trembling. "Troy, please. I don't know what we did to upset you, but this has to stop. I've lost 3 clients this month. People are saying terrible things, that I cheat vendors, that I'm dishonest. It isn't true. Please call me. We can fix this." I deleted the message. Evan wasn't faring any better. His boss started double-checking receipts, asking questions, requesting documentation. Rumors spread through the warehouse. Evan's numbers didn't match the books. He was scrambling to explain it away, blaming clerical errors, system glitches, anything but himself. Aimee called next. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice cracked almost immediately. "Dad, please. I'm begging you. Whatever I did, whatever we did, I'm sorry. Just stop. Everything is falling apart. Evan's job is on the line. Richard's business is gone. Victoria's reputation is ruined. I don't understand why you're doing this. I thought you loved me." I listened to the whole thing. Then I replayed it a second time. One line stood out, sharp and painful. "I thought you loved me." Past tense, not think, not know. Thought. I saved the voicemail. Not because I wanted to hear it again, but because it marked the exact moment everything between us crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The next week, I heard the Knights were planning something. An engagement dinner, a second attempt, a reset button. A big, expensive event at a downtown banquet hall, catered, decorated, attended by business partners and family members. A public declaration that everything was normal, that their reputation remained intact, that they were still the shining, perfect family they pretended to be. I got the details from Paul. The vendor Victoria still owed money. She had invited him, probably hoping to smooth things over in a room full of witnesses. "You going?" I asked him. He shrugged. Part of me wants to see her fake her way through a smile, but mostly I just want my $1,200 and to never deal with her again. "What if you got your money?" I asked. He raised an eyebrow. "How?" "Let me handle that," I said. "You just trust me." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, Troy, I trust you." And with that, the final piece slid into place. The dinner was 2 weeks away. Plenty of time? Time to gather the last threads. Time to weave them into something that could not be ignored or undone. Time to ensure that when I made my move, it would be quiet, precise, and absolute. I wasn't going to hurt anyone. I wasn't going to lay a hand on a single person. But I was going to take from the Knights the one thing they valued more than money, more than status, more than Aimee herself: their image. The first step was getting inside. The banquet hall was called the Conservatory, a place designed to impress. It had floor-to-ceiling glass walls, chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls, and marble floors so polished they reflected light like mirrors. The kind of venue people rented not just to celebrate, but to be seen celebrating. I called them the day before, disguising my voice just slightly and pretending to be a vendor. "Electrical inspection," I said. "Just need to confirm outlet load for the sound setup." They gave me a time without hesitation. The next morning I showed up in my usual work clothes, boots, jeans, a plain shirt, and a toolbox in hand. Authenticity is the best disguise. People believe what they expect to see. No one stopped me at the door. I walked the length of the hall, pretending to check outlets and cables, but really studying the terrain. The layout, the flow of foot traffic, every structural detail. The decorative arch at the entrance looked sturdy, but I recognized it instantly as a rental piece held together by imitation bolts. Pretty, but fragile. The curtain covering the presentation area hung from a frame with a manual release cable. A simple tug, and the whole thing would drop cleanly. The sound system, a sleek digital console with multiple inputs, had a backup microphone port on the side panel. Most venues lock them. This one didn't. I didn't touch a thing, didn't alter anything, didn't leave a trace. I thanked the staff, walked calmly out through the service corridor, and drove home with every weak point mapped in my head. That night I went through the folder one final time, photos, documents, labels, everything arranged in order, more than enough proof to expose the Knights without resorting to force or underhanded tactics. Then I notified Melissa, the reporter. "There's a dinner the Knights are hosting," I told her. "Might be worth attending." "Why?" she asked. "A hunch." She hesitated for maybe 2 seconds. "Text me the address." I did. The night before the event, I sat in my trailer staring at the folder on the table. I wasn't excited, wasn't nervous, just quiet. I thought about the sign, my face. "Do not let him in." I thought about Aimee's voicemail. "You're always finding ways to embarrass me." I thought about Richard's contempt. "You're a weight around her neck." And Evan's sneer. "Pathetic old man." Every word was a brick they had laid. I was simply building the house. I closed the folder, placed it carefully in my truck, grabbed my toolbox, and went to sleep. Tomorrow would be the day they learned what it felt like to be erased. The day of the dinner, I woke early, showered, put on clean work clothes. Nothing dressy. That wasn't the point. I wasn't here to pretend. I was here to be seen, as I truly was. I drove to the conservatory around 4. The event began at 7, but staff would already be inside prepping linens, lighting candles, rehearsing cues. I parked in the back lot, grabbed my folder and toolbox, and headed toward the service entrance. A woman with a clipboard stepped in front of me. "Can I help you?" "Yeah," I said with an easy confidence. "Here to check the sound system. Received notice about an issue earlier." She frowned. "Nobody told me." "Probably a communication mix-up. Happens a lot with large events. Won't take long." She hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, go ahead. Just try not to get underfoot." I slipped inside. The banquet hall was already transformed. White linens draped perfectly. Crystal glasses aligned with military precision, pearly centerpieces gleaming under soft amber lights. Guests would see glamour. I saw staging, fabrication, performance. The decorative arch stood proudly near the entrance. 2 people could walk under it at once. Symbolism, nothing more. The curtain hung heavy and dramatic over the presentation space, a perfect theatrical veil. The soundboard sat at the back of the room. I walked to it, pulled out a small connector I'd bought for $12, and plugged it discreetly into the open secondary input. It would let me switch the microphone feed to my own source if needed. No hacking, no system override, just a simple patch cable anyone could buy. Then I walked to the curtain, casually tracing the edge of the frame. My fingers brushed the release cable, a simple loop. A tug would drop everything instantly, clean and dramatic. Last, I examined the arch. I didn't loosen anything, didn't weaken it. I just confirmed what I already suspected. Appearances held it together, not structure. After 20 minutes, I left the same way I entered. Quiet, invisible. Then I waited. Around 7, the conservatory's parking lot glowed with headlights as cars began streaming in. Sleek sedans, polished SUVs, one luxury car after another. I sat in my truck and watched the arrivals. Richard stepped out of a black Escalade, straightening his jacket like a man stepping onto a stage. Victoria followed, smiling, waving, already performing. Evan arrived next, wearing a suit that looked expensive but too tight at the shoulders, like he was trying to fit into a role he didn't quite earn. Aimee stepped out last. She looked beautiful, hair styled in a soft wave, a navy dress, polished shoes. She was laughing at something Evan whispered. I felt nothing, no sadness, no warmth, no longing. Just focus. At 7:15, I grabbed the folder, stepped out of the truck, and walked to the service entrance. The same clipboard woman was there, distracted by her phone. I slipped past her unnoticed. Inside, the hall shimmered. Music played softly. Guests laughed and clinked glasses. The knights moved from group to group like royalty greeting subjects. I skirted the edges of the room. People glanced at me but looked away immediately. Work clothes are a cloak of invisibility. I made my way to the curtain, stood behind it, waited. Through a gap, I watched the room, watched their faces. Then the speeches began. Richard stepped onto the small platform, microphone in hand. His voice boomed through the speakers. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "Tonight is about family, about strength, about showing the world that no matter what challenges we face, we stand together." Applause rippled across the room. I reached for the curtain cable. Richard continued. "We've had some tough times recently. Some people have tried to tear us down, spread lies, damage our reputation, but we're still here, and we're stronger than ever." More applause, louder this time. I pulled the cable. The curtain dropped with a heavy whoosh. Gasps filled the room. Heads snapped toward the front. There I stood, alone, framed by falling fabric, holding the folder. Silence spread like a wave, swallowing conversation, laughter, even Richard's practiced charm. Richard's face flushed crimson. "What the—" I stepped forward, into the light. Aimee's smile collapsed. Evan went rigid. Victoria clutched her necklace. Melissa, the reporter, stood near a wall, notebook in hand, already scribbling furiously. "My name is Troy Harlan," I said, my voice steady, calm, measured. "I'm Aimee's father, and I have something to say." Richard stepped toward me, but I raised my hand. A small gesture, yet in that moment it carried more weight than a shout. The room fell still. Conversation stopped mid-breath. Forks hung in the air. Every eye fixed on me like the world itself had narrowed to one single point. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It carried because I meant it. "I'm here to tell the truth." I opened the folder slowly, deliberately. Every motion felt amplified in the silence. The first document I pulled out was a photograph. A job site frozen mid-construction, yellow tape flapping in the wind, inspectors clustering near the framing. "This is from one of Richard Knight's construction projects," I said, holding it high enough for people in the back to see. A stop work order, safety violations, undersized supports, reused materials, structural failures waiting to happen. A murmur rippled across the room. Richard lunged again, but two men grabbed him, guests who'd been close enough to react instinctively. They weren't protecting me. They were keeping the evening from devolving into a brawl. "This isn't a one-time mistake," I said, my voice slicing through the tension. "It's a pattern, one the county has now documented." I reached into the folder again, pulled out Paul's invoice, the one that had been ignored for 6 months. "This," I said, "is from a vendor Victoria Knight owes $1,200. She's ghosted every email, ignored every call, dodged every request. Her business looks glamorous because she builds it on the backs of people she refuses to pay." Gasps now. Genuine surprise. A few women exchanged looks. Someone whispered, "I've heard that before." Victoria's face twisted, red blotches spreading across her neck. "You're lying," she shouted. "Those are fabricated." "Are they?" I asked calmly. I turned slightly, letting the crowd see what I could already see. Melissa Grant, the reporter, standing near the back, phone out, recording everything. The red dot pulsed like a heartbeat. The truth was no longer containable. "Everything I'm showing you," I said, "is documented, verified. Many pieces are public record." Then I turned to Aimee, my daughter. She stood near Evan, her hands clasped together, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Her dress shimmered in the lights, her face pale, her eyes pleading for this to stop. I felt my own chest ache, but I didn't look away. "I spent 10 years saving for your wedding," I began. My voice softened, not for the crowd. For her? $11,400. Every penny I could scrape together, because I wanted you to have the happiness your mother and I never got. A hush fell over the room, deeper now, heavy. People leaned forward. "But on the morning of your wedding, I wasn't welcomed. I wasn't forgotten. I wasn't late." I swallowed. I was banned. A ripple of disbelief swept across the hall. My face was taped to the gate, I continued. "Do not let him in. Like a criminal, like a danger." The crowd erupted into whispers. Eyes widened. Someone covered their mouth. Another muttered, "My God." "I didn't ruin your wedding," I said. "You did. By choosing them over me, by believing I was something to be ashamed of, by letting them convince you I was an embarrassment." Aimee broke. Her shoulders shook. She hid her face in her hands as Evan tried to pull her away. She didn't move. I reached for the next set of papers. Emails, ledger screenshots, expense reports. Evan's fraud laid out in plain numbers. And finally, I said, "These are from Evan's employer. Expense reports that don't match receipts. Discounts that don't exist. Extra charges diverted. Small amounts at a time. But over a year." I paused. "Thousands. That's not a mistake. That's theft." Evan's face drained of color. "That's not... You can't... That's taken out of context," he blurted, voice cracking. But the crowd wasn't listening to him. Not anymore. Richard broke free of the men holding him and charged at me like a bull. I stepped aside with a calmness that surprised even me. He slammed into the decorative arch behind me. The bolts, those cheap imitation bolts meant for show, not strength, gave way instantly. The entire structure collapsed, sending flowers scattering across the floor, petals and fake greenery tumbling like confetti at a funeral. The room erupted. People shouted. Others stumbled back. Phones appeared in hands like weapons. Melissa pushed through the crowd, still recording, capturing every furious second. Victoria shrieked, pointing at me with trembling hands. "You've destroyed us. You've destroyed everything." "No," I said softly. "I just stopped pretending you were something you're not." Evan surged toward me, grabbing the front of my shirt with both hands. "You're insane," he hissed. "You're a psycho." I looked straight into his eyes. And there it was. Fear. Not of me. Of exposure. "I'm just a father," I said quietly. "And you took my daughter from me." His grip loosened, then fell away entirely. I pulled out the final item in my folder, the envelope, the one I had taped back together, the one that held a decade of sacrifice. "This," I said, holding it up, "was my savings. A decade of work, a decade of hope, and all I ever wanted was for you," I pointed toward Aimee, "to have the wedding your mother never got to have." I let the envelope fall. It fluttered down like a wounded bird and landed at Evan's feet. "You wanted me gone," I said. "Congratulations." Then I pulled out my phone. Hit play. Evan's voice burst through the speakers, clear, undeniable. "She doesn't need you anymore. She has a real family now. People who can actually provide for her." A collective gasp filled the room. Aimee's knees buckled. Someone caught her before she fell. Her face had gone white, her eyes vacant. "That's your husband," I said softly. "That's the man you chose." I closed the folder, tucked it under my arm, turned toward the exit. Nobody stopped me, not one person. As my hand touched the door, I heard a voice, small, broken, barely a whisper over the chaos behind me. "Dad. Wait." I didn't turn around. I didn't slow down. I stepped out into the cool night air, letting it fill my lungs, and walked to my truck. Behind me, the conservatory boiled with shouting, crying, accusations, the sound of a perfect image shattering into pieces. I drove away. I never looked back. The story broke the next morning. Melissa's article was everywhere. Prominent families' dark secrets exposed at public event. It had photos, quotes from guests, copies of the documents I'd shown. Richard's business was done. The investigation expanded. More complaints surfaced. He shut down Nightbuild within a week. Victoria lost every remaining client. Word spread about the unpaid vendors. Her reputation was finished. Evan was placed on administrative leave. An internal audit confirmed the expense fraud. He was fired 2 weeks later. Aimee called me 17 times that first day. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, texts, emails. "Dad, please. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Please talk to me." I read them, but I didn't respond. 3 days after the dinner, she showed up at my trailer. I heard the car, heard the door, heard her footsteps, a knock. I opened it. She looked terrible, eyes red, face pale. She'd been crying. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Dad." I didn't say anything, just waited. "I didn't know about the sign," she continued. "I swear I didn't. Evan told me you didn't want to come, that you thought it'd be too emotional. I believed him." "You didn't ask me." She flinched. "I know. I should have. I should have fought for you. But I was so caught up in everything, in the planning, in wanting it to be perfect, in wanting to be part of their family. Why? She looked at me, confused. Why did you want to be part of their family? I asked. She started crying. Because I thought they were what I never had. A normal family. With money, with stability, with a future. You had me. I know, but it wasn't enough. The words hung in the air. Honest. Brutal. I'm sorry, she said again. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know I hurt you, but I need you to understand. I was stupid. I was selfish. I wanted something I thought was better, and I lost what actually mattered. I sat down on the couch. She sat across from me. Mom would hate me, she said quietly. Your mother would forgive you, I said. But I'm not your mother. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. Are you saying you won't forgive me? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know yet, I said honestly. She nodded, wiped her eyes. I left Evan, she said. I can't be with someone who treated you like that, who lied to me, who made me choose. Good. I moved out of the Knight's house. I'm staying with a friend. Good. She looked at me, desperate, pleading. What do I do now, Dad? I leaned back, closed my eyes. You figure it out, I said. Like I did. She sat there for a long time, then she stood up, walked to the door, stopped. I love you, she said. I didn't respond. She left. A week later, Paul got his money. Victoria sent him a check for the full amount plus interest. No note, no apology. Just the check. He called me. How'd you do it? I just reminded her what happens when people don't pay their debts. He laughed. Well, thanks. I mean it. Don't mention it. Richard tried to salvage what was left of his business. He couldn't. Too much damage. Too many burned bridges. I heard he took a job working for someone else, a foreman again, but not respected, just employed. Victoria disappeared from the staging world. Last I heard, she was working part-time at a furniture store. Evan moved to another city, no job lined up, no prospects, just gone. Aimee called once a week. I answered about half the time. The conversations were short, stilted. She'd ask how I was. I'd say fine. She'd tell me about her life, her new apartment, her job. I'd listen. One night she asked, Will you ever forgive me? I thought about it. Maybe, I said, but not yet. Okay. I need time, Aimee. I understand. She did. For the first time, she actually understood. Another week passed, then 2, then a month. I went back to work, odd jobs, handyman stuff. My life didn't change much, but I felt different, lighter, like I'd been carrying something heavy for years and finally put it down. People in town talked. Some looked at me with respect, some with pity, some avoided me altogether. I didn't care. One evening, I was sitting outside my trailer when a car pulled up. I didn't recognize it. A woman got out, mid-30s, professional. Mr. Harlan? Yeah? My name's Karen. I own a small construction company. I heard about what happened with Night Build, about the code violations you exposed. I nodded, didn't say anything. I wanted to thank you, she said. Richard's crew did work for one of my clients a few years ago. A shoddy job. The client sued me. Cost me thousands. But I could never prove Richard was at fault. You did. I wasn't trying to help you, I said honestly. She smiled. I know, but you did anyway. Look, I'm expanding. I need someone who knows quality work. Someone who won't cut corners. Someone I can trust. Would you be interested? I looked at her, surprised. I don't have a contractor's license. You don't need one for the role I'm offering. Site supervisor, quality control, making sure the crew does things right. Why me? Because you care, and that's rare. I thought about it. When would I start? Whenever you're ready. Give me a week. She nodded, handed me her card. Call me. She left. I sat there holding the card, turned it over in my hand. Maybe something good could come from all this after all. 2 months later, the Knights sent invitations for a second engagement dinner, a public attempt to rebuild their image. I got one. It surprised me. Aimee called. Are you going? I don't know. Dad, I want to move forward. I want us to. Please. Why help them rebuild? You're helping me. I told her I'd think about it. At the restaurant, I sat in my truck, unsure. Then I saw her waiting outside. She looked older, tired, but stronger. You came, she said. I'm here, not staying. She nodded. They're doing this to save face. Richard thinks pretending everything is fine will make people forget. Will they? No. She hesitated. I know I don't deserve it, but I want you to come inside, to show them you're not afraid. I'm not afraid. I know, but they don't. I thought of the sign with my face. Do not let him in. I smiled. Let's go. Inside, half the room was empty. Richard's jaw tightened when he saw me. Victoria looked away. Evan wasn't there. I didn't care. I stepped into the center. The conversation stopped immediately. I'm not here to forgive anything, I said. I'm here because my daughter asked me. And unlike some people, I show up. Richard stepped forward. You've got some nerve? You tried to erase me. You failed. You tried to destroy me. You failed. You tried to turn my daughter against me. That worked for a while. Not anymore. Aimee was crying and smiling. I pulled out the taped, torn envelope, the wedding money I'd saved. I set it on the table. Pay people back. Or don't. I don't care. I'm done carrying your weight. Richard just stared at it. I turned to Aimee. You ready? She nodded. We walked out into the cool night. Behind us, shouting erupted. Something broke. We didn't look back. At my truck, Aimee laughed through tears. What just happened? I finished it. She hugged me hard. I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. I know. Will you forgive me? Eventually, you'll have to earn it. I will. I believed her. That night, sitting outside my trailer under the stars, I thought about everything. The past, the pain, the sign, and finally felt the weight lift. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't carrying anything I didn't choose. I was free.